Okay, what I want to do today is to get started on this piece of repair work down here. So it was only when I moved the remainder of the cabin sole that I noticed this crack down here. So it doesn't really look like tabbing. It looks like it might have been a possible repair. Maybe, you know, if it was beached, if Wanda was beached earlier on, this could have been some sort of patch repair. And you can see there's sort of spider cracks there as well. So it's in a little bit of a difficult position to get to because you've got this navigation station table here. So I've just been looking at this to see how I can remove this, if it's possible to remove it. So I found a few plugs on that side, so that looks quite promising. Hopefully that's just screwed into that nav bulkhead there, and that will come out. And then on this side also there's some plugs here which I'll take out to get to some screws, hopefully, and plugs there as well. So really the only difficult part with this is going to be down the very bottom of this. It's actually tabbed in under there, so I'll need to cut through that fiberglass tabbing, so maybe you can see it back there. So the alternative suggestion was to just basically cut out about 20 millimeters down the bottom of this so that we could repair this piece here, but then, you know, it's going to look a bit messy, so I think I'd rather just take this whole thing off and then make sure that we can you know, really get to this piece so that we can grind it back and feather it out and do it properly. Yeah, so hopefully it'll all work out. I mean, the rest of the cabinetry was pretty good. I guess the only difference here is the first part that I've actually got where it's tabbed in. So this time I'll be cutting through that fiberglass tabbing, and then obviously you need to re-tab it to put it back together, but that should be okay. And then there's a little section here as well, which is the footrest for the nav station. So again, I've found some plugs there. So there should be some screws behind these plugs. I've not had to remove any plugs yet, so this is the first time I'm going to have a go at that. And I guess I'll just have a go with a screwdriver and a hammer and just try and tap them out and see how that works. I guess it just depends whether they're sort of glued in, or sometimes people use varnish to seal them in a little bit. So we'll see how they work out. Okay, well, most of these have come out fairly easily, which was good. They don't seem to have any varnish or glue holding them in place. These ones over here are a little bit deeper, and I think I've gone into this one a little bit too aggressively because it's splintered there. But that's okay, because there'll actually be a drawer here hiding this anyway, so I guess it was a good practice at how to remove these, but not, you know, not do any damage to the surrounding wood. So what I've been finding is I've just been sort of tapping out into the centre here, and then it all sort of just comes out quite nicely. Sometimes you get it all in one go, sometimes you have to sort of take pieces out like this. Fiddly last part. There we go. 3, 4, so we've got 9 screws here plus these 2. So I'll undo these next, and then I'll cut it down here, cut through this tabbing. Hopefully the whole thing will just come out. Hopefully. Alright, well so far so good. All these plugs have came out. So just got a large, just a normal screw in there, straight edge screw. So to see how they come out. Hopefully they should come out easily enough. Now, how does that feel? Is it going to move? Hang on. Maybe that has to come out as well. It doesn't feel like it's going to make any difference. Ah, shit. Maybe that's glued in as well. That would be disappointing. And there's this other piece here, which is the slides or the rails for the drawers. There's a drawer that slides out here. But that shouldn't be holding this in. It looks like this piece here moves. I wonder if there's plugs in that. I wonder if there's some dowel in that, that's holding that on. That would be a pain as well. What a shame. I was really hoping that this frame would just come out with those screws removed and those plugs taken out. This backing is bonded in, it's tabbed into the shell, so that's not going to move. Let's have a look from the other side. This is either glued in or there's a dowel into this holding it in place, but there's no movement here. It's not going anywhere. Bugger. Well, in typical fashion, what happened here is the first 9 screws came out perfectly without any problems, and then these 2 down the bottom are just not moving, and there's been a lot of water in this wood. It's quite rotted, and the screws have sort of started to corrode or break down a little bit, and they're not moving. So I've tried for the last 15 minutes. I'm going to have to drill them out. So yeah, it was going smoothly. Now just have to deal with this problem. Such a pain having to drill out the screws. Okay, so that's I think it's about a 2.5mm. I'll just work my way up to something bigger until the whole thing comes out. It feels like it's gone. I'll just clear it out though. I think I'm going to replace this piece anyway. There's a split here and it's really quite rotten. I guess it's because it's down the very bottom where all the water was gathering, and there is a bit of a leak around here. So I'll replace this. Just need to get all of this out. so there's nothing left behind. Okay, so this came out. Seems to just be, not sure if anything was holding it in this end, but this part here was obviously very, very wet, rotten, and these two screws here down the bottom, I just had to drill both of those out because they weren't working normally. There's one there and one down there. So maybe down the bottom here, the part that's hidden by this panel, I can try and get a screwdriver in there and see, you know, if that is glued in or if it's just firmly wedged in there. Let me try and see if I can get some movement in that, because I still don't know how this is all put together. There's something holding it beyond these screws here. I mean, obviously there's the tabbing down the bottom, but up the top I would have expected a bit more free movement. Okay, well, I've made a little bit more progress with this nav table. So what I've realised is there is actually a bit of sort of dowel under here. So there's sort of, yeah, there's a piece of, well, not dowel, but it's a join going up into a cavity or slot here, so that's preventing this from moving around. So what looks like has to happen is, I think the whole nav table needs to come off so that I can get to this frame down here. So this is obviously moving around a bit. Like, I can lift that up and get a view of that joinery there. So under here, it's a little bit difficult to get to, but there's like a corner piece that's screwed in down there. So that's holding the top of the table against that bulkhead. But it seems to be more than that that's holding this in, because this isn't moving up at all. So there's something here fixing this down. So what has to happen is, I mean, it's top down basically. This has to come off so that this base here can lift up, and then this will then be able to pull out this way. Again, it's just got some fiberglass tabbing down the bottom, so I'll have to cut through that anyway. So, you know, the whole thing has to come out basically. It's as usual, it's going to take a lot longer than I originally planned. I'm also curious as to what's happening here, whether this is actually going into this sort of bulkhead here, whether there's like a cavity that this is slotting into to prevent it from going up and down. Because just with that one strip holding this back against that, I would have thought that it would have been sort of loose or moving upwards a bit, but something's holding this down. Maybe this is helping. Okay, well, I'll try and take this top off now. Okay, so I found out why I'm not able to move this top of this nav table up. So I've undone this strip that's is screwed back into this, and then this top is screwed down into that strip that runs along there. So I've undone that, but this still was not coming up, and I found out on the other side I can see some plugs here. These are actually really neatly covered, but there's 3 plugs here which are keeping this frame in to the bulkhead, and then yeah, there's probably another couple here along this line. So I think what has to happen is I need to take all of these plugs out and screws out. That will then enable this top piece to come out this way, and I can lift it up and off. And then that will let this underneath piece here come up over this this sort of joint in here. So this has to come up and off, and then this piece here can actually come out. So the whole lot needs to be undone in order just to get this piece out, which again is just so that I can get down to this this piece of delamination down here, which is going up and under here. So the only thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is the finish here on these plugs is excellent. Like, you can barely see them, and this is the side of the settee, and it's sort of exposed. So I'm just concerned that I might not be able to do as good a job when I put new plugs back in to line up as perfectly with this, and I'm just worried that it might not look as seamless. But unfortunately there's no other way around it. I mean, that's the only way that I can get this out. Alright, back to it then. Well, finally I've made some progress on this nav table. So I've taken out the plugs that were on this side and the 3 screws that were holding this through here. So now that will allow me to move this up and out a little bit. I kind of expected that the whole thing would lift up and out and I could pull it all apart, but what they've actually done, which is kind of annoying, is right in that back corner of the nav table they've tapped it into the shell there. So this top part can never actually come up and out because that corner is tapped in, as is the end of this frame there that goes back along into the shell, so that's tapped in as well. So basically that whole corner is tapped in, which means, you know, this can never really come out. But what I have been able to do, just by lifting it up on this side a little bit, it's come up enough to enable these frames here to come away. So, which is what I needed to do, because this whole piece can come away now, and the only thing holding it in is the tabbing right down the bottom there. So there's fiberglass tabbing into the shell, you know, which I'll cut through in a minute. So that's okay. I knew that that was there, and I'll just have to retab it afterwards. But yeah, so I can pull this out, and then I can basically get to that patch down the bottom that needs to be ground out and then refiberglassed, and then I can put this back together, which is okay, because I was starting to think the downside with pulling all of this out is it's actually giving a fair amount of structure to this bulkhead here. So with it tabbed into the corner and then screwed down into this, and then the bulkhead is secured to it from this side, it just basically makes this nav station bulkhead you know, really sound. So I guess if I did basically undo all of this, the risk would be that this might be have a little bit more movement in it and might not be as rigid and as secure. So it's okay, you know, I can lift up enough to get this out, which is all I had to do. Alright, so in terms of, don't know if you can really see, probably not. There's just a bit of tabbing on the other side down the bottom here. So I'm just going to get my multi-tool and cut down underneath this along this way to break that bond. And then that's it, I'm done for the day. Right, well finally I've got that frame out. So I cut through all the tapping down the bottom which was holding it in place, and this is it. Now when it came out it's split down the bottom here. It's actually come apart, and this wood down here is quite it's quite soft. There's been sort of water damage down here, so you know, it's okay. I think I'll just rebuild this frame anyway, give you a good chance to use my new router that I've got to try some of these joins. So that should be fairly straightforward to reproduce. And I guess the good thing is I can use this wood here to test how to restore the finish of it, like whether to sand or strip it or heat gun, or I'm not sure at the moment how to get this finish off and then reapply it. So so this will be a good test piece anyway, because it's pretty much the same material as this bulkhead, and I'll need to think about how to get this finish back once I put new plugs here, and then obviously need to stain the plugs and try and get this all to match. So you know, I can use this piece here to experiment on. Yeah, so this is all just coming off here. It could be that this was a previous repair job and it just wasn't laid up correctly. Maybe it wasn't prepared well, so the whole thing is just lifted off. So anyway, now I can get to this. Plenty of room to work, and I can grind all this back and further out a section so that we can relay the glass, and then this this tabbing can be redone as well, and this wood can be dried out and epoxy. So what I want to do next time is remove this cable here and get this out of the way so that I can work on this area. And as I do that, I want to try and trace some of this cabling to see what it holds, because I'll have to upgrade the wiring at some point, so I should probably start looking now at what everything's going to. Okay, but more about that next week hopefully. Okay, thanks for watching.